Hello there from San Diego Comic-Con territory. Once again, another one of our prep videos in the series this year. This time it's the big one. It's about the convention center and kind of the lining up process. We're going to intersplice some video here as we did last year. It's going to show you some of like the traversing and like which way to go if you're heading towards Sails Pavilion or behind Ballroom 20 or any of that. So that'll be coming up in this video. But let's start out just talking about Comic-Con in general here. We're filming right behind us is Hall A. To start out, we talked about this in some of our live shows this year, things like that, but a very common question is is this the normal year? And obviously getting further away from the pandemic, there are some things that normalize, but there are some odd things this year as well, of course. Of course, there's been a lot of change-ups and curveballs for small businesses, particularly small businesses, but all businesses related to tariffs. So that may impact some of the prices on the floor. Also, we know Hollywood has been kind of messy, going all in on streaming and where that comes. We talked about that in our outside the convention center video, but that's also going to play obviously on the inside in terms of like what kind of swag is potentially being given away and just the presence there. The panels, as we're recording this, the schedule is starting to roll out. So this video is going to go up after the panel schedule has been released. I've been actually really, really pleased with how much Hollywood is present, how much is coming to Ballroom 20 and Hall H and all of that. And the thing about it is those their presence there, it always adds to, I think, the experience for a lot of people in that it pulls people off the floor as well. So even if you're not somebody that wants to go to Hall H, it's nice if it pulls people away from that. And so I do think that's going to help this year. It's going to make things a little bit more stable on the floor a little bit. And we have a whole floor guide video as well, I should point out, where we do a deeper dive into different booths and kind of the strategies once we hit the floor. So you can find that on our channel as well. Now, a couple of things as we start out just talking about the convention is some of the philosophies. This really gets kind of developed around a lot of the most common questions we get, which is like, how do you allocate your time? How do you make decisions? Literally on the walk over here to film this, we were talking about some of the different opportunities that have come up for us and like, what's the time? Everything costs time at Comic-Con. It's not just like the line or how long the panel is, but it's how long to not just get in the panel room, but also to even walk to the panel room. If you're down at Hall A and you're going to make your way down to Hall H, that's even a walk. So it all adds up the time and traversing. So I think when it comes to that, one of the things we're really big on is really we plan out everything. Like my planner right now has so many things booked for the entire convention. And in a lot of places, there's conflicts booked. And we'll have 2 or 3 things planned for like every hour of the day, but also being really open to opportunities. We constantly find, and if you listen to like our podcast over the years at the end of the convention, we always talk about like all these like left turns that we took where we didn't plan to do a thing. And then we did it because an opportunity arose. So I'm really big. And honestly, it's my favorite thing about Comic-Con. My favorite thing when people ask like, what are you most looking forward to? I am very excited about things like Clown in a Cornfield being here or Peacemaker, etc. But I'm really excited for what I don't know yet. I always love looking back at pictures of things. And it's like, oh, I didn't even know that was going to happen. Or I didn't know this reveal was going to be there. Or this person was going to be there. Or this comic we were going to stumble upon. So that's always a big thing. Now, that said, also a big part of Comic-Con, I think, is networking. And we know a lot of you are in things like Discord groups. We run a Facebook group. We see there's 16,000 of you in that group as well. So we know a lot of people are communicating. But if you're new to the con, I really do suggest trying to find groups. But even if you don't have a group, you can really use social media quite a bit to just crowdsource things. I think crowdsourcing helps a lot. Every day on the drive-in, every day when we take a break for a little drink or a lunch or 10 minutes, or even when we're getting ready to podcast or things like that, I'm constantly going through and searching the feed. And for me, it continues to be just like it was back in like 2008, is going to X now, Twitter then, and searching hashtag SDCCs and just seeing what I find there, seeing what people are saying about line updates, seeing what people are saying about opportunities, swag, the giveaways, photo ops, all of those things. So I think that, if you have a group, that's fantastic. And I do think it helps make the convention a lot more fun. But even if you're coming, maybe this is a solo year for you, or maybe every year is solo. I think that really is a great way to find out information. And then it helps us inform choices, because it's like coming back to that prime thought of like, opportunity cost is, do I want to get in line for this thing? Is it quote unquote worth it, you know, and a lot can be helped by just crowdsourcing that. We will share all of our experiences, or as many as we can, of course. We'll retweet or repost, if we want to call it that. Our friends at the SDCC blog will be doing that all the time as well, the unofficial blog, of course. On that note, make sure to follow along with them, not just for like prize drops and things like that, but just the information. In the weeks leading up to the show, it's like you can find everything there. Everything we do, we use them as our first stop source, and that continues throughout the convention weekend. They're so good at being part of that crowdsourcing and really helping direct a lot of that crowdsourcing of information there. And then lastly, in this category, remember that time is currency. You know, longtime attendees know that. New attendees, it can be something that's not really thought as much, but it's just we only have so many hours a day at Comic-Con, and then they go really fast. I don't think time moves faster anywhere in the world for us than it does at San Diego Comic-Con. It is gone in a blink of an eye. And so with that being said, then I really, really, really encourage you to make really thoughtful choices about everything and just try to enjoy it and be okay with the flow of the con taking you in different directions. Maybe you had this thing planned and some other opportunity comes up and you go this way, and just lean into it and enjoy it, and don't, you know, have regrets of like, you know, I missed out on that other thing. There's going to be, you know, the nice thing about Comic-Con, or the frustrating thing, is none of us are even going to do a 0.5% of the offerings. There's just so much to do. And it's awesome because if you do know a bunch of people too, it's like you meet up after the con and like everybody had such different experiences because there was so much there. And so really, really hope, especially new attendees, can lean into that. So with that said, we are here at Hall A, and Hall A is an access point for our friends that have ADA, for volunteers oftentimes checking in there. This is a spot that I know when I myself was in a wheelchair for a year, this was like where I accessed the floor. And so that is one spot that's very important to know if you're coming into Comic-Con and you need to check in that area. And I guess I should say also, as we're recording this, there's a lot of information that's still making its way slowly out. So when we get to like the Hall H wristband distribution, for example, I'm going to be going over like what is the normal rules and what we did last year. But as of this exact recording, they haven't released anything new or updated on that. So, you know, again, this is where we got to keep an eye on social media to see updates there and see what's going on with all of that information. So that said, now let's talk a little bit about some of those other lines, the two big lines, the Everything Else line and the Hall H line. All right, now let's talk about making our way into the actual convention center. The most common question we get is always related to something like, where do I line up for room 6A? Where do I line up for you know, the Hasbro booth? Where do I line up for the signing? And the answer for so many things when it comes to the convention center is really, it's very simple. We're either lining up for Hall H or we are lining up for Everything Else. The Everything Else line is exactly as it sounds, everything else. And so that is going to all be happening on the far end of the convention center down there towards Hall H. Now, very important at this point to mention this. What you want to do with lining up in the morning all depends on what you actually want to do and how the priorities are for that. So what I'm going to be doing is kind of talking through, for people like us, like we want to be on the floor on the earlier side. We're not camping out. We're getting here at 7-ish or 8-ish or things like that, depending on other commitments and things like that. But for us, we are trying to be on the floor as close to open, or on preview night, as close to open as possible. Some people don't care about that. There's not a certain booth they need to be at right away. There's not a panel that they want to be, you know, in the earlier part of being in line. And in that case, you can just wait off to the side and don't even come into this mess until it's fully going. So for example, in the morning, you know, if you're just wanting to walk into the lobby and not have to do a long wait, or have to do any kind of wait, I should say, then I would target like 10 a.m. Just let everybody kind of flow in there. Because what happens with the lining up is everybody lines up outside and then they're making their way into the convention center, and that's targeting and open. Now, Comic-Con is incredible. The staff, the volunteers, everyone at Comic-Con International is incredible at getting people onto the floor. So much so that we get really spoiled. As longtime attendees, we always are thinking they're going to open the floor a half hour early, because they really try to, you know, and when it gets to like 9:05 in the morning, even though they'll quote 9:30, when it gets to 9:05, if we're not moving, we're kind of like, I wonder what the problem is. But what happens though is they are just so good at trying to get people in. But the process they have and we're going to walk through that and show you video of kind of coming to the convention center. Is a very set one to get everybody in, and it loops you throughout a big chunk of the convention center and ultimately onto the floor. So if you don't want to do all of those extra steps, you can just wait it out. We oftentimes will have people that will reach out and they'll say, well, I got there at 9:20 and they were making me go up an escalator and around the building and then back down, and I didn't understand. I saw people were already on the floor. Why couldn't I just go right on the floor? They have a process to really make it as much as possible a first come first serve. So you getting there at 9:20 and they make you do the whole loop around is because the people that are hitting the floor were probably there at 8 or 7 or 6 or 5 or whatever it might be. So let's talk about actually making our way in, and specifically with the everything else line. So the everything else line, we are going to be getting in line most likely outside and making our way into Hall G. Of course, have badges out as you approach. There will be the tap-in process, so please make sure to have that. And we've talked about that in a lot of our tip videos of just kind of having those badges out and ready, honestly, the entirety of the time that you're in the convention center or around any of these activities. Then you make a left, and again, there's going to be volunteers all over the place helping to guide you. They do such a good job of making it really clear of where to go. I mean, honestly, if you try to go the wrong way, especially in the morning, as we're talking about this entry process, there's going to be somebody correcting you because they're just not going to allow it in most cases. That isn't to say that there aren't, sometimes some missteps, there aren't some miscommunications. Of course, these things happen, especially with a convention as large as this and so many staff. But for the most part, they're going to guide you quite well. And that escalator up, it's a really nice ride up. Seeing, always take time to look to your left, to your right. They don't want you running up those stairs anyway, even if you have that in you. But I always love it, especially when it's the first day or two of the con. It gets a little sadder as you get to Sunday, but just going up the escalator and you're like, yep, this is about to be the start of a great day. And again, this is all for that early morning entry part. You're not going to need to do this whole route if you're just going to hit the floor at 10 or 11 or something like that. Once you're off the escalators, you are again going to be guided to make a right. Now, the escalators that we came down, that we just came up, are going to be the same ones that we come down later. So this, for those that are going to enter by that Hall H area there. So we're going to basically be making a big circle. But as we're walking here, I mean, the people that were here at 4 in the morning or whenever, they are already seated over there by Hall G. So we're going to make our way down this line. We made a right. We're going to go down it, and we're going to follow and stay, evenly paced. Again, there's not any running in the exhibit halls. You'll hear people say that, and we're just making an easy kind of transition over there. Again, we always like to just kind of check out the skyline because it's not like we're going to, try to beat these people for coming at this time of day anyway. So just kind of an even pace and checking out the view and all of that. Thanking staff, sometimes volunteers as we go by, because it's obviously cool that they're taking from their time to give it. Now, this route that we're taking in the regular hours of the day, it's not going to be so guided. As you notice, as we're making our way down here, it is everybody to the far right that they're keeping everyone. They don't want anybody kind of mingling in to this other area there. But once everything's fully open, if we come back here at noon, you'll find that it's much, people are going both ways, left, right, everywhere, because people are just accessing the rest of this convention center. But it's a long walk as we make our way down here. Now, as we are continuing down, we have to start thinking about our choices. And I mean, we would have thought of this ahead of time, but we'll see that are we going to line up in the Sails Pavilion area to access the floor that way? Or are we going to continue around the back side of ballroom 20? Or maybe there's even panels, a room 6A or something like that, that we're going to want to hit as we get up over to this area. So as we're thinking about those choices, and we talk more about this in the floor guide video, which you can find up on the YouTube channel now, but a lot of its philosophy, I really feel like in this era that we live in right now of San Diego Comic-Con, it just comes down to really a preference of like, what is maybe that first booth you want to hit in the morning. I don't know that I've found, and Carmel and I, we kind of go back and forth. Sometimes it's more sales, sometimes it's more the other side. I think we generally are more on the Hall H side entry of coming down the escalator. But really, I think people that are really into the Sails Pavilion side, there's a lot to be said for that too. I don't know that it is a massive matter in that way. Now, that said, as we talk about in the floor guide, though, those booths that you're going to hit, I mean, if you're heading to Pop Mart, you're going to probably want to go line up in the Sails Pavilion. If you're going to Pokemon, if you're going to Small Press, those are all reasons that we would go over to that Sails Pavilion. But if we're going to be going to something like Hasbro or Hallmark maybe, or the Star Wars Pavilion, Funkville, Artist Alley, those would be reasons we'd go to Hall G. Now, one thing to note as well as we get kind of closer to Sails Pavilion, there is the option to stick far right. And in that case, that's to pick up the lanyards, the programs. If there are bags, as we're recording this, we don't have all that info, but that's normally where we go to pick those things up. I know we've had a few people reach out about like, how do I get my lanyard? Things like that. That's a pickup process. You can do that before the convention actually starts, but let's just say you're coming out on Thursday and that's your first day and your only day at the con. But generally speaking, we make that left, and now we are running right up against Ballroom 20, and this is where we decide, do we go Sails Pavilion to the right? You know, we pass maybe a couple stormtroopers, some Imperial help. It's always so cool to see them as part of the volunteers out there doing their thing. But do we do that far right, and now we go line up in the Sails Pavilion there? That's also an option after, if we were coming to get our lanyards, we could do it right after there. Or do we keep on going down straight? And again, behind Ballroom 20 is where kind of that next big choice comes. There'll be some food options over there. There's some ADA access area. The chocolate bars, if you're interested in those from the convention center, at least if some of the past practices hold, we pass those up along the way as well. Not a lot of food options in the morning, so it's a good idea to eat beforehand. But there are a few different spots there to grab coffee and some kind of simple treats there. So let's say we don't splinter off to the Sails Pavilion. Then we continue. We're going around the backside of Ballroom 20. Now, there's another option there. Maybe we want to line up for one of the panels. Maybe we want to line up for Ballroom 20. That's going to be behind that area there. So we're going to kind of stop there. And again, there's going to be signage. The volunteers are fantastic. Just always feel free to ask anybody that you see as a Comic-Con volunteer. So I want to line up for Ballroom 20, and they're going to point you right in that way. Another good thing about Comic-Con, as challenging as it is to do some things, there's always 1,000 other people that want to probably do whatever you're doing. So it's always pretty easy to get the information of where you want to go. But maybe you want to go line up at, for 6A or something like that, and that's going to bend you to the right, and you're going to go out those glass doors in that mezzanine area, and you're going to queue up over there. But let's say we're going to the floor and we're going to finish this loop. In that case, we're going to continue going around the back side of the convention center behind Ballroom 20. We're going to make that long trek. So it's almost taking us in a complete circle by the time we're done, from where we went up the escalator to all the way around. Somewhere there, that line's going to stop. It's going to be really a wide line there, probably, 15 people wide. And you're going to wait there, and ultimately you're going to be allowed to go down the escalators. Now, when we go down the escalators, leftmost is the way we're going to want to go on the escalator. If we want to go towards Funko-ville, Artist Alley, this is just Stylin' Online over there. Rightmost, if we want to go more towards the center of the floor, we want to head towards the Star Wars Pavilion or Nickelodeon or Doctor Who or some of those. Now, the middle on the escalator, it's interesting. In the last 2 years, it's changed. One of the years, the middle one was pushing you to the left. The other, it was pushing you to the right. And so what I would advise on that first time through is just either go rightmost or leftmost if you can. And then once you get a feel for like how they've got things set up, because they're not going to let you cross when you get down there. Like if you get in the leftmost and you're like, no, I want to go towards Nickelodeon, they're just going to make you enter over towards the Hall H side of things, and you'll have to loop back around. Not the end of the world, but it does take some time. Then as you are making your way towards the floor, remember to hold that badge up high. Like let them see your badge, because they need to see the badge again at the doors. And so, you just hold it up there like it's your pass to get in, your ticket to get in, which it obviously is, because they're going to want to check it. But sometimes people put it back in their bag, and then it holds things up and slows things down. Then once you're on the floor, we'll leave that for our floor guide video. So that's on a different place to go ahead and check that out. Now, the question of what time do we need to get in line, that is all about what you want to do and how much it matters to you. Is how important is it? Is there one thing on the floor that's like, if I don't get it, or is there one, you want to do Ballroom 20, but you want to be in the first 2 rows? That's a very different question than I just want to be in the room. I know for Carmel and I, we just want to be in the room for panels. Usually, of course, we'd love to be in the front, but we're okay if we're like in the room. But we have a lot of friends that want to be like, if they're not in the first 5 rows, they're like, well, this was a waste of time, because they want to get those really great photos up front, and that makes sense. So for you, all of that weighs in, and there's no way to easily answer that. And that goes back to like networking and finding out what other people are doing, measuring those wait times. As I said, as we're driving in, we're checking. We constantly find soft spots where somebody's like, hey, the line for Hall H is this short, or this thing at Ballroom 20, or this thing with the, and that's where we sometimes make changes there. But it's really up to you of how much it matters. For us, we are very much like 7:30 people in the morning in terms of lining up for the floor, usually 7:30-ish. On preview night, I really like to be in line by 4 the last few years, and this year is going to be the same. We've had press appointments for different offsite activations, and it's been much later. So like last year, we didn't get in line for the floor until like I think it was like 5:45 because we actually had a thing at Adult Swim. Obviously, it was fun doing that Salt Swim. It killed me that we weren't lined up earlier for the floor. That said, if you watch our live, you can go back and check out our live from the floor. Like, I think we were in a really good spot anyway. Like, it wasn't the end of the world. People flood the floor in so many different directions. We were able to bop around and see all sorts of cool stuff, even getting in line much later. So that's for us, though. But if you're like, I need to get to the Hasbro booth, I need to get that, Void Rivals Transformers set, and it's just going to be a waste of a year if I don't get it, then that's going to be different. You are going to want to line up that much earlier. But for us, we try to really look at it like worst case scenario, and there are a lot of exclusives I want this year, but honestly, I don't think many of them are going to be that expensive 6 months out. So if I have to wait 6 months and buy them on eBay, I'll do it if it gives me a couple hours more fun wherever it else is in the convention, whether it's an offsite activation, a panel, or whatever it is. But for you, that's really a personal question of how much it matters and what time. So we can never answer that question of like, well, what time should I get in line for that thing? It's really, what is your goals? What is that time value to? Last thing for this little piece of the segment is I'd highly encourage you as much to use preview night if you have it as a scouting night. Like that's what it always is for us. Like we definitely hit the floor. We always do a YouTube live for people so they can check out the floor. But as soon as we finish that, we start hitting different booths where we're kind of investigating, like what are the giveaways there? What are the signings? Is it the same as they reported online? Is it different? We talk to booth employees, and particularly that 8 to 9 hour is really valuable on preview night because things really start to calm down. A lot of people leave the convention by that time, and it's easier to talk to booth employees and say, hey, you were giving out this really cool pin. Is that something you're doing throughout the weekend? And they can give you a little more context sometimes. So preview night's a great scouting night. If you don't have preview night, maybe you have a 1-day badge, you have 4-day without preview night, I highly suggest still using preview night for scouting, but on social media is again checking out that hashtag SDCC and seeing what people are posting, obviously what we're posting, what the ublog is posting, etc. And you'll find your own scouting report there from the comfort of your hotel room or your home or wherever you might be. So that said, next up, let's talk a little bit about the backside of the convention center, sales, mezzanine, and all of that. We've moved to the back of the convention center here to talk a little bit about kind of how some of the lines intertwine and a little bit of guidance there, and also just some more about philosophy when it comes to panel rooms and them filling up stuff. So in this exact spot, we've got the convention center behind us. That is the Sails Pavilion up there. As we talked about, one of the access points. You cannot enter the back unless, I should say everything changes, like everything changes. So, but generally speaking, you cannot enter in the back there. You have to enter around the front side of the convention center. But up there, that is an area that has a lot of activity. But before we get up there, this area down here has had more and more activity every year. I mean, the Rady Shell is behind the camera back over here. They have events, concerts, things. Lines may come down this way. We may have the next day line coming out here. Indigo is down there a ways and the Hall H stuff, but it can all intersect. Abbott Elementary, Hulu, more and more activity has moved to the back of the convention center in the last few years, and it's made a lot more confusion sometimes with lines. That said, again, great thing at Comic-Con, there's always somebody nearby that you can ask. They're not just the volunteers, although they're fantastic, and the staff, but truly, even the attendees are so helpful with that stuff. So even though we've been going to Comic-Con since 2005, I don't know that there's ever been a line we've gotten into without still asking someone. We know where Hall H should be. We know where the everything else line should be. We know where the next day line should be, but we still always ask. There's just no harm in it. And I think that goes a long way at Comic-Con. And I think it's something that sometimes first-year attendees are maybe a little more reluctant to do, but just lean into it, ask those questions. Now, talking a little bit more about that mezzanine area up there. For one thing, it's a really great break area. We share, every year we talk about how, we do podcast recording up there. We take food out there sometimes. And way back in the day, even seeing Stan Lee hanging out there taking a break. It's just kind of a nice, quieter area in general up there. But also up there, they use some of the lining up area for some of the ballrooms, some of the various panel rooms up there. And so that leads to a question just about like, well, when should I get in line for some of these more small rooms? Maybe Hall H, that has a lot of talk about wristbands and day before, night before, hours before, all that. But things like 6A can be really confusing because they're not as big, but they're bigger, than a lot of panel rooms at a lot of convention centers, but a lot of times the fandoms. And so really it's tough because you're trying to think of, so for example, this year Revival being there, like how big is the fandom for the Revival TV series that's coming to San Diego Comic-Con? Now, I know I'm a big fan of it, but am I going to line up for it? How much time am I willing to line up? And it becomes a very complicated question of when to get in line. So again, if you really want to be in, if you are the number one Revival fan, and it's not in ballroom 20 and it's not in hall H, and it's like, I'm going to still get there early, like it is one of those big rooms that thousands of people want to get into because it matters that much to me, and I'm going to make that decision. But it's going to come at the opportunity cost, whether it's sleep or other time. Again, it can be tough to make those guesstimates sometimes, but they're all really important in kind of the thought process of how much time you're going to take with each of those things. Now, one last thing at this spot before we move over by Hall H is just the lotteries, the exclusive portal, signings, all of those things. Remember with those that the more they increase in opportunities, which is awesome. It's fun to look there and see that it's a lot of different opportunities there. It's one of those things that every year it's like, well, what can I win? And who doesn't like to win things, right? That being said, the more people it are, more opportunities there, the more it kind of crowds other areas. And so that does make activations a little bit busier. It makes other aspects of the floor. It's all like an ecosystem, right? How busy is Hall H? How many people are in the portal? How many are doing offsites? And it all kind of balances out there. So there's no one easy answer for these things. Every year, there's some things that are like over busy that people are surprised by, and there's things that aren't as busy that people are surprised by. But it is something to note there. Now, in terms of philosophies as it comes to the portal, for us, we're oftentimes just really going for the things we love the most. It's pretty simple. There's so many things that we're interested in, and so many of them are in the portal, but we really try to concentrate and focus on like one each for the two of us that are going, and like really, really try to put all our tokens there. I will say in things like exclusive booths, I think a lot of times you have a little more success or a little bit better chance of success not going first thing in the morning, but then you risk things selling out, right? So for example, the Funko booth, if you want that very first slot, probably a lot of people want that first slot because it's most likely to have everything before it sells out. So it is, would I rather get into the booth and maybe they're sold out of 5 of the things, or do I really not care if they're sold out of 5 things? These are, again, those kind of balances. And I think a lot of them are just things that the more you go to the convention, the more you become comfortable with some of these decisions and kind of the opportunity costs of all that. So with that said, now let's finally talk a little bit about Hall H. All right, during Comic-Con, there will be tents here. These are the tents where people will be hanging out, waiting to get into Hall H and making their way there. Hall H is kind of the panel room that gets, the most popularity. It has the biggest panels. Doesn't mean some of our favorite panels haven't occurred in other rooms, but it does mean that it gets a lot of attention. And so we do want to talk about that specifically here, the procedures. Now, first, to talk a little bit about, again, that idea of like what's in the panel rooms and choosing how early to get in. This is a good time to talk about like the biggest thing beyond even like our interest in it, though, is what else is in the panel room. There's no clearing of rooms, not just for Hall H, but ballroom 20 or any of them, which means that if there's a panel at 6 p.m. that someone really wants to see and sit as close to the front as possible, they may get there for 9 a.m. and they may stay for all these other panels they may not be interested in just to be in a really great spot for that. So you have to weigh that into things too. Now, this year, there is no traditional Marvel panel, and so that changes things a lot because when that happens, and it's a good one to just use as kind of an example, but if there's something as popular as the MCU at 5:30, it doesn't matter if the rest of the day is them doing like timeshare advertisements. Like, it's still going to fill up. People are still going to be waiting the day before. And so it is important as you're looking at your panel schedule for every room at the convention, look at the end of the day and then work your way back and think about things of like room flow, people leaving, changing it up. Now, our friends at the Unofficial Blog do a really good job. They do 2 shows, 2 podcasts. You can find them in audio or on YouTube, where they break down the schedule, and they have so many years of history with panels. It doesn't mean any of us can look in a crystal ball and know exactly what a room flow is going to be like, but when you listen to them, these are people that have done panels and been wanting to be at the front of the room or been just okay to be in the room, and they talk about it and really work through it. So I can't suggest checking those out enough to be kind of in tune with what their thoughts are on these various rooms at the convention. Now, talking about Hall H specifically, again, you've got that everything else line and you've got the Hall H line. So Hall H attracts a lot of people. It may not be quite as busy this year. It feels like there's a lot of panels there that people want to see, but it also feels like they may be a little bit more like come and go, meaning like there's a panel I really want to see, and then there's 2 that don't fit with that fandom, and then there's another one that maybe does fit with that fandom, and so people might leave and things like that. So it could be a really great Hall H year. The best Hall H years, honestly, are years to me when it's like open and close, and open meaning that people are going in, watching a thing, leaving, going back in, watching a thing, We love being able to just pop in for panels and be able to check them out without having to wait hours and hours and hours. Now, some policies, again, these can change, but as general policies for Hall H, they do generally do wristband distribution and some things that go along with that then of getting your wristbands. This takes place the day before as you are thinking about going to that show. That's where they are, that panel, I should say. So if I'm wanting to do something on Saturday, the distribution is normally beginning again the day before that. Again, all the information is going to come out officially from Comic-Con International, so stay tuned to all those social channels, but beware. But a few other rules that go along with it whenever that distribution is. No camping is allowed. They have some really specific rules about that. Absolutely no tents, canopies, inflatables, cots, beds, furniture, oversized coolers, space heaters, large fans, large umbrellas, chase lounges, and it goes on and on. So do make sure to read those rules and make sure you're really clear on what you're allowed to have and what you're not. You are permitted to have one chair per person of relatively normal size, is how they say it, so not oversized there. You cannot leave unattended personal items, chairs, sleeping bags, umbrellas as placeholders in line. Restroom access is available in lobby G, so that is a nice thing. If you're spending the night, you want such a great seat for that next day, they do keep restrooms accessible there overnight, so you don't have to go all the way back to a hotel or something like that. Now, looking at last year, distribution began on Wednesday at 7:30 p.m., and that was for Thursday. So you would come over and get your wristband then. People may line up very early for it. People may not line up at all. We know sometimes people are heading back to their room at the Hilton Bayfront and they're like, oh, they're handing out wristbands. I guess I'll go ahead and grab it. Now, the wristbands are tiered. And so the earlier you come, the various colors, that's going to give you a priority in the room. And so you can leave, you can get your wristband, leave, go sleep in your hotel, come back the next day, maybe at 5 a.m., maybe at 6 a.m., maybe 7, maybe 8, maybe 9, whenever you, and basically you can get in line by that color. And so you go and you find your group and now you get in line there. So it's kind of like it's holding a place, not an actual physical place, but a general tier type space for you so that you're able to go back and enjoy that hotel room that you spent so much for. So last year that went each preceding night starting at 7:30 or 8 p.m. So again, we'll see what the details are for this year. Now, once you get inside Hall H, make sure you come prepared. Bring your own food and drink. Do not rely on Hall H. One of these years, I feel like the convention center is going to have like some sort of food truck type thing going on in there, and they're going to make like a lot of money off of it. But generally speaking, the food and drink offerings are fine. They're okay. They're kind of standard convention center stuff a lot of times. But many times, especially if you have any dietary restrictions, you're going to want to really plan that out. I know in our earlier years of Comic-Con, sometimes we made the mistake of getting into Hall H, and then we would end up staying a lot of hours there and not really having much to it's like nachos or chips or hot dogs or things like that. And you might want to pack a little bit smarter than we did in those earlier days. Lastly, on the like getting in line, and again, that most common question, I feel like we get it like 20 times a day as we get closer to Comic-Con of what time should I get in line for X, is I do feel like, you know, I don't like getting in line too early for things. As I said, our philosophy is to try to have that time to do other things. But at the same time, if there's something super important, I don't feel like I've ever gotten in line for anything that was super important to me, whether it was a theme park, a convention, Comic-Con, or otherwise, where I regretted being in line early. I have regretted not being in line early enough. So again, if you have that make or break thing, if you have to see the Ghosts panel, you know, CBS Ghosts, wonderful show. If you have to see it in Ballroom 20, then, you know, you're going to want to really put a different emphasis on it than maybe other people that are like, I'd like to see it, but it's not the end of the world. And again, that's where crowdsourcing that information, I think, comes in handy. At the end of the day, we can never totally know what crowd patterns are going to be because we're talking about literally over 100,000 people and what they're interested in and what they are doing. And so all of those things we have to kind of weigh into it and just accept that. So with that said, we're going to start wrapping up here. We have a lot of videos on the channel. If you are interested in Comic-Con prep, we appreciate you checking them out. We'll have lots of videos. We have a couple offsites lined up for preview night that we're going to be doing videos of. So we'll be kicking videos out throughout Comic-Con as well, these weeks leading up and during Comic-Con. You can follow along with us there across social media, Parks and Cons, TikTok, you know, Instagram, all of those things you can find us posting as well. And then we have hundreds of hours of podcasts. So if you want to listen to Comic-Con talk all the way back to, 2014, you can find it on our podcast channel there, where we're nearing 1,000 episodes. It's crazy. Been doing this a long time. So we are wrapping up here from the Hall H line. Until next time, we will see you in line somewhere.